Now, if you want the Broncos' 6-year playoff drought to end, go ahead and subscribe because why jinx it, right? Why leave it up to chance? Do your part, Broncos Country, and let's ride. Today's edition of the Broncos Breakdown is sponsored by Mint Mobile. You may have already heard of them or seen some of their ads with actor Ryan Reynolds, but they've got an awesome deal for all of you watching right now with cell phone plans starting as low as $15 a month. All right, get started today over at mintmobile.com/chatsports. That link's in the comments and the description of this episode. Plus, we'll tell you more about their great benefits later on. But now, let's get into the nuts and bolts of today's show. We've got an interesting one for the people as an interesting trade rumor from Spotrac, whatever you want to call it, came across my wire. Plus, one NFL GM believes Russell Wilson is high maintenance. So we'll be breaking that all down. But first, let's talk about the trade rumor because Deion Jones is on the PUP list for the Falcons, and it's unlikely he's going to be playing down in ATL this year. And Spotrac believes there could be a trade between Atlanta and Denver. Now, Spotrac, if you don't know what they are, they're great for all the contracts, all the finances of the league and whatnot. Haven't seen them do a ton of trade idea stuff, but they decided to maybe leave their lane a little bit and suggest the Broncos make a trade for Deion Jones. In fact, here was their trade idea. The Broncos get Jones and the Falcons get a 6th-round pick, which sounds fair, except the Broncos don't actually have a 6th-round pick, but that's fine. We'll let it by and get by for today. But to me, trading for Deion Jones makes a ton of sense when you look at the Broncos' inside linebacker room, which we'll do later on. But I don't think the most important person in the world in this position wants to do that, which is Broncos GM George Paton. He has shown in a brief little snapshot of what positions he values and doesn't value super highly, that inside linebacker is towards the bottom of his list. And that's kind of just the trend right now across the NFL. You want you want defenders that can keep up with receivers in the slot. You want fast, athletic defenders. And inside linebackers don't really fit that mold. So you've seen a big switch away from your old typical run-stopping Mike linebacker to more athletic, nickel dime package defenses, and that's not really what Deion Jones fits. But before we look at any stats and really start to break this down even further, I want you guys to be the GM, right? Be George Paton for me. Should the Broncos trade for Deion Jones? Simple T for trade or P for pass. I want to know what you're thinking on this one down in the comment section. Now, if they're going to make any trade, I think it's important to look at the future draft assets or what few assets they have left, honestly, because after the Russell Wilson deal and you don't have any picks from the Rams coming over this year, Denver's left with just 5 2023 draft picks, all right? 2/3, a 4th, a 5th, and a 7th, right? Their 1st and 2nd belong to the Seahawks. They picked up a 3rd from the Colts this past draft, so they actually don't even have a 6th away to trade for Deion Jones, but whether it's a 5th or a 7th, I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think Payton wants to do it. But Deion Jones is one of the best inside linebackers in the NFL. Now, granted, he's been a bit of a, snapshot of himself the last 2 seasons where he hasn't looked like the Pro Bowl linebacker that the Falcons gave a huge contract extension to. Plus, Atlanta is in a complete rebuild mode. They know Mariota is not their future, so they don't really want a huge contract tied up to a position that's just devaluing as years go along. In fact, last season, Pro Football Focus wasn't very kind to Deion. They rated him 81st out of 87 linebackers in the league. An overall grade of 34.6, not a very complimentary run grade of 35. Held his own in the pass department with the run grade, a nice one too of 69.5. Before we wrap up the entire Deion Jones trade segment of today's show, I just want to tell everyone watching about the great benefits they can get when you get started at Mint Mobile. Not only are you going to get unlimited talk and text, but you will be on the nation's largest 5G network, which means high-speed data plus mobile hotspots, all that great stuff starting at $15 a month. And probably best of all, you can do this from the comfort of your home. Thanks to new eSIM technology, you don't have to change your phone or get a new phone number. You can keep your current phone and number, and boom, Mint Mobile is going to send you an eSIM right to your house, and you can do it on your couch while watching the Broncos breakdown. So get started right now at mintmobile.com/chatsports. Links in the comments and the description of today's show. The reason why I would be open to trading for Deion Jones is he's better than Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton. I think a change of scenery and a contending team that he's on would bring the best out of him because, no offense, but I mean, Peyton has, filled a lot of holes this offseason. One of them was not the inside linebacker position. He re-signed Josie Jewell to that 2-year contract, brought Singleton over from Philly in free agency, banking on Jonas Griffith taking a huge step forward after being mostly a special teamer last year after being traded from San Francisco, and then got some real starting time and minutes the last stretch of the season, the last couple games here and there. But this inside linebacker room definitely could use a bit of a facelift. Now, the finances of a Deion trade would look like this. The Broncos' current cap space right now, $11.2 million. Most GMs want to keep some money in the bank just in case an injury happens and they have to sign someone midseason, or they want to do a Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton extension, so to speak. Now, Jones's base salary is $9.6, so that would eat up most of their remaining cap space, and that's what the Broncos would have to inherit if they were to trade for Deion Jones. As for Atlanta, their dead cap hit over the next 2 seasons, $15.2 million. It's not very appealing for them to pay someone $15.2 million to not be on their team, but they're also rebuilding right now. And they know Deion Jones is just not going to be a part of whatever the future of Falcons football looks like, so they might be open just to getting anything they can for him at this point. But while we talk about the Broncos defense here, I want you guys to weigh in for me. Rate their defense down below on a scale of 1 to 100. We went over Madden rankings, and they gave the Broncos a 78 overall. So I'm really curious where you stand, whether you want to go over or under that. Let me know where you'd pencil in the Broncos defense on a scale of 1 to 100 for 2022. Next up on the show, we're going to talk about an interesting article that came out from Bleacher Report, and then I did some Big J investigative journalist and went down a rabbit hole of Russell Wilson articles and whatnot, and why one NFL GM called him high maintenance. But here's what the anonymous GM said. The difference with Russell is he is a lot more high maintenance. He's got the entourage. He needs the office at the facility, the extra hotel rooms on the road, all that stuff. It'll be interesting to see how the dynamic works with a rookie head coach and rookie offensive coordinator, how they'll gel. So this all stems originally sort of from a 2018 article on Russell Wilson and his dynamic with the Seahawks, which personally I thought was a wonderful marriage, right? They won a Super Bowl, we know. They fell short the next year, but ultimately it didn't actually come across that way towards the end, all right? Here's what Joseph Zucker said in his Bleacher Report article. But a dozen sources with direct knowledge of the Seahawks' internal dynamics who spoke to Sports Illustrated this summer also pointed to a locker room they contend had fractured last season, with private spots spilling into public view and a rift deepening between those who supported Wilson and those who felt the coaches held him to a different standard. So now I'm starting to think, was Russ just not as loved as we all thought while he was with the Seahawks here? Because some of his former teammates, and granted, this is the NFL, right? These are the most competitive people on planet Earth. So even when you screw up in practice, you're going to get people riled up. But even some of the big wigs on defense weren't head over heels with Russell Wilson, all right? Here's that SI article. That afternoon, Sherman intercepted Wilson. The two traded words, and Sherman yelled, "You blank suck, you effing suck," as he flipped the ball back at the quarterback. The pick itself wasn't as important as what happened afterward, when several players who spoke to SI said Carroll gathered his offense and defensive leaders and told them they needed to protect Wilson, to treat him more gently than they would their other teammates. All right, more from this. One former Seahawk says he and a handful of teammates speculated that Carroll judged Wilson too emotionally fragile to handle the criticism, be it from them or his coaches. That presented Carroll with a difficult choice between the environment he'd fostered and the franchise quarterback he'd found in the third round. He chose the quarterback. The former player says a choice many coaches would have made, adding, Carroll realized Russ couldn't handle being a part of the dynamic we had. So now I'm starting to really go down a rabbit hole thinking, was the trade not all Russell Wilson wanting out of Seattle? Or did it get stale a little bit on both ends? Ultimately, I think John Schneider wanted to keep Russell Wilson. You don't go out of your way to trade a quarterback who's made 8 Pro Bowls, 9 Pro Bowls in the last 10 seasons, but maybe there was a little bit of a sour taste in their mouths over the last couple of seasons, and a handful of players leaving the Seahawks unhappy with the organization, and I always pointed the finger to Pete Carroll or John Schneider. But maybe Russell Wilson was standing behind those two guys, and he was catching some strays as well. Now, I honestly do believe Russell Wilson's a pro. He will adjust to a new team, a new coaching staff, and he's not going to come in here thinking he is bigger than life. And I don't even care if some people are upset that he's spending some time in the offseason traveling the world with Sierra and going to Wembley Stadium for Ed Sheeran concerts. No, that is not going to impact his week 1 performance, no matter what you think. But I do believe this is not something to go, oh no, what did we get ourselves into, right? Can we hit the undo button? Do not let a couple old, teammates of his in Seattle begin to keep you up at night just a little bit, kind of like a mid-range putt where you're like, it's a little longer than comfort. Don't be too stressed out about this. But I did find it interesting about the high-maintenance comment from a GM because, let's be honest, Russ is very good at the quarterback position, but he's a bit corny. Like, that's who Russell Wilson is, right? I mean, Broncos Country. Let's ride. That's who we got with Russell Wilson. He's awesome, but he can be a bit of like dad jokes that aren't even funny. Now, who do you have for week 1? As we kind of wrap up today's show, let me know. I'm expecting to get a lot of DENs for the Broncos, but I'm curious if we got any Drew Lockers out there that really want to, speak up for the former QB and pick Seattle. I don't think so, but let me know who you got for week 1 down below. And if you have not subscribed to the channel already, please make sure you go ahead and do so because training camp is here. And you're going to want to be tapped in for the best Broncos YouTube coverage out there. So click that sub button right now.